Hello, Dulcimoon! Welcome, welcome. Guess what? I'm live in the flesh again! It's a live recording. Today I am with Tina Gugeler. And Tina is a Hammered Dulcimer, two-time Hammered Dulcimer champion, right?
Yes.
And a wonderful part of the Colorado Dulcimer community. And she is in Kansas right now for the Walnut Valley Festival, which actually we're both going there tomorrow. And shout out to my friend Mike, who's sitting in the background here, who provided this beautiful place for us to do the recording in a quieter spot than once we get to the festival, where things will get kind of crazy. So thank you for being here, Tina.
Not a problem.
So we like to just kind of start with, like, what was the origin story of Tina Gugeler, the Hammered Dulcimer champion? How did you get here? Where did it start?
Weird. I met my husband when I was living in South Louisiana, south of New Orleans, and he came from Iowa, and he wanted to fly float planes. This is a semi-long story.
Okay.
So we ended up getting married, and then he wanted to move to Ketchikan, Alaska, because there was job opportunities there to fly float planes.
Sure.
So I went there. Now, prior to that, I was a nurse, and in college I had bought myself a guitar, and played chords and stuff. And in 8th grade I had 1 year piano lessons, so I could break the code of reading music with a pencil and all that sort of stuff. Very, very humble beginnings. But the desire was always there. And, college I started playing the guitar. So I had bought myself a flute and tried a little bit of flute stuff. Anyways, we ended up going to Ketchikan, Alaska after we got married. And I heard this person, a duo, one guy's playing a guitar and one guy's playing this instrument. I had no idea what it was, but it was a hammered dulcimer.
Wow.
And
in Alaska, of all places.
Of all places. That's where I found it.
That's amazing.
And I'd asked him, what is that? Famous question,
Yeah.
It's a hammered dulcimer. How does that work? He says, well, you can come to my house. I thought, I don't even know this guy. And I'm coming from south of New Orleans, so it's high crime. And I'm thinking, I'm in Ketchikan. There's only 30 miles of road. Even if he kills me, the only way he can escape is by boat or by plane, because there's no road in and out. So I thought, I'm pretty safe. And I ended up being in a band with him. He wanted to play more old-time fiddle, and so I sort of became the hammered dulcimer person in that little trio. Sometimes we'd have 4 people. And he said, well, do you know any reels? No, what's a reel? Yeah. Do you know any jigs? No. He says, it's in 6/8. I can do math. I'm good at math. Anyways, but he was the first person I saw that played a hammered dulcimer. I didn't have one at the time because I'd never seen one. And so I ordered one from Elderly Instruments, and it came from Seattle at the time, and up to Ketchikan, and it was a 1211, a smallish one.
So would that have been a Dusty Strings dulcimer?
It was a Dusty Strings dulcimer, but it came from Elderly, which was in Michigan or something, but it was a Dusty Strings instrument. So by a long route, it got up to Ketchikan, and I had little alphabets, what the string names were and stuff. Anyways, so that was my start. And right away, I started playing with this group of people. And I think that's the best thing, if you can start playing with people right away. And we were playing contradance music, which I didn't even know what a contradance was. And, if we had 20 people in our group, because Ketchikan was a small town, we were pretty good. You didn't get paid. You just had fun, playing it. So that was sort of my introduction. So I had a little bit of music background, really small. But a big desire, because it was such a cool instrument.
Yeah.
And so I started playing with people right away, and I started playing contradances right away, and you'd have to memorize the tunes, but I could kind of sight read if it was easy. And
contradance tunes, at least some of them, tend to be fairly simple in their structure.
yes,
And then you gradually kind of build the complexity of them as you...
correct.
Yeah.
So I started out, again, as most hammered dulcimer people would, playing melody, because we already had a guitar person in the band and had a fiddle and a flute, and so I was also another melody person. Anyways, we ended up...
So,
Go ahead.
What was that Hammered Dulcimer player's name?
His name was Dale Miller, and he's since become like a boat captain for some of the ferry boats in the Inside Passage in, southeast.
So he's still in Alaska?
Yeah.
He's probably still introducing people in Alaska to the Hammered Dulcimer.
I don't know. I've lost touch with him, so I don't know if he's still. I'm assuming he still plays because he was an excellent player, and his background was drumming, so he knew rudiments. And hammered dulcimer is a percussion instrument, so drummers are like, oh, it's a drum with real notes, you know.
It's drums that I can play a tune on.
Yeah, he was very good, and he was my first person ever seeing. And then John McCutcheon was touring, and he was in Southeast, so I got to see him in a concert. So that's the first professional hammered dulcimer person I ever saw.
Nice. So you started with the contradance tunes and the melody, as you were saying.
Right.
And then kind of what was the next phase of the development
next phase,
for you?
so we were in Ketchikan for 5 years, and then we moved to the Denver area. And I was looking for where do you find people to play music with? And it was a bit of a struggle because I didn't even know where to start. So, somebody said, well, try Swallow Hill Music School because it's a folk music school.
Yeah.
And they didn't know anything about contradances per se. But somebody said, well, try the CFootMed, which is Colorado Friends of Old Time Music and Dance. And through them, I found some other people. And then I saw a person who was teaching at Swallow Hill named Doug Birch. You know him?
Yeah.
And so, he plays hammered and mountain dulcimer. And so...
And he builds too, doesn't he?
I think so, but I don't know if I don't think he builds hammered dulcimers. I think he builds mountain dulcimers.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyways, and he's since moved out of the Boulder area to Michigan or somewhere. Because he's not in our my neck of the woods anymore. But so I took a few lessons with him because I was self-taught. So for the first 5 years, I didn't know if I was doing it right or not, but I thought, well, I seem to be holding my own, and I was. Anyway, so that was my
Isn't that that interesting thing that humans do of like, I need to know if it's right or not, and then when you're working in creative spaces, right is anything that gives you the results that work for you. Like
I know. Well, I went to one festival, I think it was Swannanoa, and I was in the class as a student. Again, I've already been playing a bit, and then I found people in the Denver area to play with. But I thought, why not? Check it out. Am I like way behind the 8 ball or not? So I'm in this class, and she's teaching, and she's checking the students, and she looks over at me. She says, "How come you're not teaching?" It never occurred to me that I was above the average of being self-taught because there was no parameters. I could do whatever I wanted to do. So anyways.
Yeah, and when you're not around other people who primarily play your instrument, it's also that interesting. Like, how do you compare your level against somebody who's playing a different instrument?
That's exactly right.
And which, in a lot of ways, my background is like going to Winfield was the place that I learned to play music, and it was not dulcimer specific. And so it's like, in a lot of ways, I figured things out that I might not have if I was actually around other dulcimer players primarily.
You think that's what you're supposed to do. And when you don't have that constraint, you can do whatever you want. Again, I had started out mostly doing melody. And then when I moved here, I was playing with a guitar player, excellent fingerstyle guitar, but we'd play these little gigs, and I'd line up us some little gigs, and I was playing melody, so he was sort of stuck playing rhythm, which I didn't realize I was sort of in his space, because he was a fingerstyle, and he wanted to do more of that, and so we ended up not playing together anymore because that's not meeting his needs. And so I had these gigs lined up, and I still had to do these gigs, and so I'm practicing, and I'm thinking, whoa, it sounds really naked, just the melody. And that was the biggest, it hurt that, he wanted to separate from playing together, but it was the best growth jump, because all of a sudden I realized how naked just the melody was. And then I had to figure out, okay, how do I embellish my stuff? And that was a big jump right there. Playing by myself, but making it sound fuller.
Yeah. So I know one of the things that you have done is arrange a lot of more contemporary music and kind of popular music on the Hammered Dulcimer. So what was if you started with contradance music, how did you get from there to...
Well, because, I'm a college girl of the 70s, and that's the music I liked. And it wasn't the hard rock stuff. Some of the hard rock stuff, I just would pick out the pretty stuff of the hard rock tune and not play the wild metal stuff. I just, I'll play like Carry On My Wayward Son, a Kansas tune, but I don't do da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, that doesn't sound great on the Hammered Dulcimer. I'll play the lullaby part. But anyways, again, limited musical background. One-year piano doesn't give you a whole lot of tools to work with. So a lot of times when I have the melody in my head, I can usually find the tune if it's not jazz or something super, super chromatic. But so a lot of times I'd go to the internet and find a lead sheet that just had the lyrics and the chords. And they're not always right, but it would give me a base to start with.
Something close. Yeah.
So that's how I would start to arrange my pop tunes, because I didn't have the music for it. I just had what chord, and I could mess with the chord and make it work for the melody that I'm plucking out of my head.
Yeah. So when did entering contests kind of come into? So you had the experience at Swan and Nowhere where someone said, "Why aren't you teaching?" Did that lead you to teach?
Well, some word of mouth, and I just had one or two students, and but I'm not a teacher. My background was as a nurse, but so you learn what works, and then you realize different things work for different people. You learn that
one size
by
fits
doing
all
it
isn't the thing.
Right. But what happened is somebody said, "Oh, well, in Colorado there's this festival and they have a Hammered Dulcimer contest." So I drove out there. It was about a 2.5-hour drive to
I forgot they
Buena
used to have
Vista.
Okay.
It was in Buena Vista. And so the first year I went there, there was a guy and his wife was joining him on mountain dulcimer. And he, of course, won first place, and I won third. Come to find out, it was Dean Lippincott. Okay, but I didn't know anything about him or Renee at the time, so this will carry on further.
Yeah, so these are Kansas Winfield connection people.
Harvard people.
Yeah.
So then the next year, I went again, and I ended up winning first place. So this was in '92. And I didn't know it, but at the time when you win first place, they gave you a ticket to Winfield because it was a feeder competition type thing.
Yep.
A Winfield ticket and a competition entry fee. You got that.
Yeah.
And that was when I first went to, Walnut Valley.
Yeah.
So that was in '92. I won, and so I was automatically in there. And I was signing up on the list when I got here, and I'm looking, there's like 30 people or something, and it's like, oh man, am I so out of my comfort range, because I have that person's book and I have this person's book and I have that person's CD. And I'm like, oh, big fish in a little pond, and now I was like, I'm a minnow. So of course I didn't place, but the next year I did come out in the top 5. So that's when I started coming. So I've been coming every year since '92, except for the 9/11 year.
Yeah.
So
so when did you connect with Carp Camp then?
Well, so the first year I came in '92.
Yeah.
And again, I had seen Dean a year before, but I didn't know who he was. I didn't know where he was from. Yeah. I just knew he won. It's like, well, I'm going to win next year. So, and I did. So, came here on the Thursday of the official Winfield Festival, because I didn't know anything about Land Rush stuff.
Right, pre-festival.
And I was
the whole thing.
So I was in Pecan Grove, because that was the only place where there was some space. And so I was looking for Irish music to play, because I didn't know any bluegrass or anything, and didn't really know old time that much. And so get over to the West Campground, and I found this Irish group of people, and I'm sitting there trying to play with them, but they were pretty tight-knit group. They didn't give me the time of day. They didn't say, hi, come sit with us. It was very cliquish, and I thought, man, I could be snubbed back home. I don't need to come to Kansas to feel like this.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing next door there's people laughing and playing tunes I know, contra dance tunes, and so I went over there, and lo and behold, that was Carp Camp. And so I'm in the back periphery, and I'm playing, because I know all these contra dance tunes. I've been playing contra dance for at least 5 years. My first Bible of tunes was the Fiddler's Fake book.
Yes, me too.
Great standard. And so I knew all these tunes in fiddle keys. And anyways, I'm playing at the back edge of Carp Camp, and I happened to see Dean, and I recognized him and his wife from the competition. we're playing, and he says, "How do you know all these tunes?" It's like, how do you not know these tunes?
Doesn't everybody know these tunes?
Well, because he hadn't played for contra dances as much as I did or something. You know, he was like, according to him, you know, he'd work up a set of tunes and then compete, and he was very, very good at what he does. And he's won lots of competitions. But anyway, so that was my introduction to carp camp. Trying to find people to play with, being snubbed by an Irish contingent. I don't even know if they're there anymore. But then finding the happy people next door at carp camp. And that was all she wrote. That's all we needed.
So for folks who are watching this and they've never been to the Walnut Valley Festival and they don't know what we're talking about when we say Pecan Grove and Carp Camp and these things, I know that it is impossible to describe because I try to describe it to people and I fail all the time. But how would you describe what's happening in this festival as it maybe compares to like a more traditional Dulcimer festival?
To me, the festival attracts, it's a big, basically kind of a bluegrass festival with several stages of excellent performers. Bluegrass, old time, Celtic, a wide array,
there's always
a wide variety.
Cowboy western swing, and there's
But so there's kind of two types of people that the Walnut Valley Festival in Winfield attracts, and it's participatory, which is us who likes to play music, and we play with our friends, and then the audience type people. They love to listen to this kind of music because it's really fun. And sometimes it's both. But there was a festival a couple years ago. I never saw one of the stage shows. I was at camp the whole time, and you know, kind of moving around with other Albuquerque group of people and stuff, just playing music with people. And I don't know if I maybe saw a half a stage show. It's like I'm walking. It's like I want to be playing with my friends.
Yeah.
The
first year that we all came back after the pandemic, that's how I was. I was like, I haven't played with anyone for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was play obsessively. I even got a blister on my ring finger because I played so much the first few days. And I went, wow, my calluses aren't up to this.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I have sometimes talked to dulcimer players who come to the festival for the first time because of the contest. They know, like, there are dulcimer players here because there are these contests here, and then they're disappointed because they can't find the jam that is what we often see at dulcimer festivals, which is all of the dulcimer players sitting in a circle together with only other dulcimer players. And it's true that that's not what tends to happen here. The hammer dulcimers and the mountain dulcimers are just interspersed around the campgrounds, and there are, 500 jams happening simultaneously on Friday and Saturday night of the festival. So you're not going to find one jam where all of your people are congregated necessarily, but just like you said, you can go to a jam and have an experience of not feeling like you fit there or not feeling like they want you there, and then you can walk 10 feet away and there's a completely different jam happening with completely different people and a totally different vibe. Right. And you just kind of keep walking around until you find the place where you feel like, oh, I know some of these tunes, or oh, these people seem like they're really having fun, or they're my kind of people, and you sit down and you play, and maybe you do that for 5 hours or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where everybody starts getting those big cushy things to put on your chair. Because after a while, it's like there's some tiredness happening back here.
I have remembered a few times when I'm like, wow, I'm starting to feel kind of tired. I wonder how long I've been playing. Oh, 4 hours. That would explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, as a hammer dulcimer player, and probably you as a mountain dulcimer player, when you have clubs, it's all hammer dulcimer or mountain dulcimer, whatever. But when you come here, one of the first times I came here, there was a group. I was again walking around trying to find who to play with, and there was a group of hammer dulcimer players. I didn't know anything about them. It's like, wow, they're playing Devil's Dream. Again, my Bible, the first book I got was the Fiddler's Fake Book, and Devil's Dream is a tune in A, and it had G sharps in it. Again, my first hammer dulcimer was a 12-11. It didn't have any G sharps in it. And so I struggled with that tune. And here I'm walking down, and first time to be at Winfield, and it's like, wow, these hammered dulcimer players are hot. They're playing Devil's Dream. And I struggled with that. So I go over there and chatting with them, and I'm looking at their music, and it's like, oh, they dumbed it down. They put it in the key of G, which I started right off the bat playing with fiddlers.
Yeah.
And so I learned the common keys that they played in, as opposed to making it easier for the hammered dulcimer. You can make it easier, but you won't learn as much as if you try to play it in the original key. There's still some tunes like in B major that I don't necessarily like to play in the original key. But anyway,
I had a similar experience with the tune Ashgrove, the Ashgrove, because in my sister's fiddle book, it was in the key of F.
Really? Okay.
So I thought, well, you can't play the Ashgrove on Mountain Dulcimer. It's in F. And then I discovered that lots of people play that tune in D.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, well, then it's super playable.
Right.
But my first experience of it was like, well, that's going to be impossible. It's in F.
Yeah.
It's a really hard
And
key
it's
to
one of those
tackle.
kind of things that there are some tunes that you know the composer wrote it in whatever key, but it's traditionally played in sessions or whatever in D or something easy or accessible. So when you know that there's possible differences of keys, like what key are we playing this in? And then at least you got your foot in the right door.
Yeah, yeah. So I have like 47 questions floating in my brain. I'm like, which one am I going to pick out next? One of the things we like to kind of dig into is, were there any like particularly strong influences in your playing journey, and were any of them women?
No, there wasn't.
Me too.
I didn't find the hammered dulcimer until I was in my mid-30s. And the first guy I saw was my friend Dale guy. And then the next professional person happened to be John McCutcheon.
Yeah.
So that was the first two people that, I had been influenced by, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, since then I've bought books that are written by different women and things like that, but I had never seen them or anything.
So, have you ever felt like awkward or uncomfortable as a woman doing this?
No.
Well, that's good.
But because I didn't start out playing solo, I was with a band.
Yeah.
And there's comfort in numbers.
Yeah.
So I never felt bad.
Good.
Or awkward or anything like that.
Yeah. And then I know that one of the things you do in Colorado is you get dulcimer players together on a pretty regular basis, and you help kind of keep a scene going in the Colorado area. How did that all start? How did you begin leading in that way?
Well, what happened was I had a handful of students. I didn't have like 30 students like guitar teachers have. I might have had 2 or 3 at the most. And they'd come once or twice a month. It's all dependent on the pocketbook. And I'd try to get them I would play piano like backup chords while they played melodies. So I was being the metronome, but it wasn't just a boring metronome. I was boom chucking. And I thought, they need to play out. Nobody was brave enough to just go out to a coffee shop and play. That's the best place to play because nobody's really paying attention to you. In between the espresso and everybody chatting, you can practice and not feel like you're on the hook for being right out front.
I think one of the best things that ever happened for me and my sister in learning performance skills was getting a weekly gig at a barbecue place on a Wednesday.
Yep.
There was almost never anyone there, It was like a small handful of people, and they were there for the barbecue. They were definitely not there for the live music. And so we could just try things in that space. And we got free dinner, and we were in college, so that was a great deal for us.
I absolutely agree with that. But for the Dulcimer Club and having those students, I thought they need a place to practice some of the skills I'm trying to teach them.
Yeah.
To practice doing backup chords when you don't know the melody. And that's when I started saying, I'm gonna host a club meeting at my house, and and it's not just for hammered dulcimers, because one guy's wife played flute and whatever. And I like playing with other instruments besides all Hammered Dulcimers.
Yeah.
It has a more orchestral sound. It fills out stuff. If they're only playing melody, you don't need 8 people playing melody, really. It's nice to have a guitar or a bass. And anyway, so it's really an open jam, but the people that mostly come are Hammered Dulcimer players. Like, I just had a meeting Sunday before I came out here, and there was 8 of us.
Nice.
And only one of them wasn't playing a Hammered Dulcimer. So
That's awesome. Yes. Good. Yeah.
but that's how it started. I wanted to give my students a comfort zone of playing with other people that they knew and friends, or they'd bring a tune they wanted to try. And maybe they didn't know the tune, they wanted to hear somebody else who could play it, and kind of hear how it sounded.
Yeah. Yeah. So did that lead them to feel braver for going out after that experience?
A couple of them, yeah. And at the Dulcimer Festival that we have in Colorado, which is in May now instead of in the winter time, but they have an open mic kind of a thing, and some of those people have felt comfortable enough to perform at open mic. So that's another step of your comfort level.
Yeah. Can we talk about the Colorado Dulcimer Festival just a little bit?
Sure.
So the Colorado Dulcimer Festival was founded by Steve Yulberg, and he ran it solo for 10 years. And then he said, I think I'm ready to retire this, and I will either hand it off to someone else, or I will just end the festival after the 10th year. That's a good landmark. And what happened in Colorado, and this is the only festival I know of that is run like this, is a group of people came together to take it on. Mm-hmm. And you've been involved in that group, right?
Kind of just on the periphery. I try not to make all the decisions because there could be a kind of a conflict of interest, because I'm also one of the teachers there. So it's like that. I don't want to get into the politics, and there's not a lot of politics. Everybody's pretty good about trying to share the load, and it's amazing. It takes like 8 or 10 people to take the place of Steve. But anyways, they all work together pretty good, and personalities have had to quit, and some of the people have had to take on more duties, and it's hard to get volunteers, with any kind of a job. But some of the job skills, like one of them is a computer person. You need somebody who knows how to do website stuff, or what, just to volunteer, you kind of need some skills on some of the positions.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be dulcimer, right? Which is one of the things that to volunteer in the right, because like you said, you need somebody who can do website stuff, and you need somebody who can do like graphic design stuff, and you need somebody who understands the finances,
right?
And those people don't necessarily have to be experts at the dulcimer to say, I really value this, the existence of this, and I learned from coming to this thing, and I would like to help make sure it continues on. I read a book this summer called Mutual Aid, and the whole book was about sort of eliminating some of the hierarchical structures in our organizing. And to me, the Colorado Dulcimer Festival is one of those like really beautiful examples inside of the dulcimer community of a group of people who came together, and there's not a person who's in charge of the festival anymore.
No,
there's
a
group of people who work together on it, and it seems like the decision making is done by consensus, just from the outside looking in, everybody comes together and works it out until everyone's on the same page about it, instead of somebody saying, this is what we're doing, this is your job, this is your job, this is your job.
Right. After COVID, everybody struggled and trying to get back into in-person festivals and stuff. So the past 2 years, we've been losing money, but they had enough cushion in the treasury or whatever in the bank to kind of, float over those bad times. We were thinking more of a winter snowstorm or something, but it was COVID that kind of wiped it. Or not wiped it, but, made it struggle to come back. Yeah. And even last year, we didn't break even. So I hope it comes back up and stuff like that, because you can't continue a festival when you're not breaking even. You can't pay the bills. So.
Yeah, it gets, the economics of running a festival are difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, since we're in person, do you want to play a tune?
Sure. I'll let you pick it. It's got to be easy. I was tuning earlier and I broke a string.
Oh, no. I was thinking about how much fun it is to jam on John Stinson's number 2 with you.
All right.
So what I'm going to do is pop, ta-da, magically appearing instruments. Yeah. Okay, so here's a little John Stinson's number 2. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Gugeler, ladies and gentlemen.
That's what Winfield is all about.
That's what Winfield is all about. That's right. Yeah. And we'll be out there starting tomorrow.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, awesome. Okay, you want to tell folks how to learn more about you, where to find out your information? You have recordings.
Negatory. I'm
Okay.
just a small fish. I have a website. It's tinagugeler.com, and it shows where I play. Which, like I said, post-COVID, it's thinner, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and you do teach, but you teach in person. You don't
I teach in
online.
person. I'm not a techie person, so I've tried it. No, I teach in person.
Yeah. So if you're ever passing through Colorado, you need to just stop in and get a lesson from Tina.
Or just give me a call and find out when the club is meeting, and you can schedule in there. That is a free. Anybody can join.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay. TinaGugeler.com. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye, friends.